And hello and welcome to another episode. There are three of us. We are here. We are joined by another beard. I feel very beardless.
You're failing in the beard front.
No, I've been growing this one for 3 years. We're joined by Mr. Mark Wright. Say hello, Mark Wright.
Hello.
There we go.
How are you?
That was Plot and Geekery. We'll see you again next time. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
No, I'm very well. Thank you very much.
Boys.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, George.
Good evening. I'm feeling like you two are both looking very smart with your hair, and my hair is still massive and all over the place. And something's gone wrong here. Have you managed to get haircuts?
My wife gave me a quick trim around the side and backs, but nothing on top. This is all still going Tom Baker.
Yeah, I've had a bit of a wifely kind of we've got the clippers out.
Clearly, I need to get onto Fiona because this it's bad.
I'm liking it. It's a good look.
It's actually starting to turn up at the end. I'm going to have a mullet soon.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
Mullets for 2020.
Maybe I'll be a mullet pioneer for 2020.
I think there's a lot of mullet pioneers at the minute, though. I think it's a natural look that's going on. It's I mean, not to poo-poo your idea. I mean, you are an influencer. We know this, especially when it comes to fashion. But I do think there's probably a lot of mullets out there. We may have some mullets watching us now. That sounds rude. That came out wrong.
Fish.
Yeah. Aha! We have a comment from Expired Milk, who has arrived to join us. Hello, Expired Milk. Expired Milk, I'd love to know what your real name is. I think you might have told us. I can't remember, but I actually quite like enjoying you calling you Expired Milk as well. Hello, good to see you. As you can see, we have Mark Wright with us. Mark, would you like to explain who you are and what the hell you're doing here?
I got press ganged into joining these two strange gentlemen. No, we've all known each other for a very long time. Cav, I've known you for good 20 years in our days in magazines, back in 99, 2000, I think.
Yeah.
And we made our first forays into the worlds of licensed publishing in those days.
We did. When we were working on T3 magazine and you were on What DVD and various other things as well. Matthew has arrived. He says, hello, folks.
Hello, Matthew.
He also says, no mullets here.
In the Toronto area.
No mullets in the Toronto area.
Toronto area is quite a big area.
Expired Milk's Earth name is Emma. Hello, Emma.
Hello, Emma.
Hello, Emma.
Thank you. I one day I'll tell him what my real name is. No, this is my real name. I only have my parents to blame. So 21 years. That is quite terrifying.
Going, and it's
I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
It is. Yes, it'll be going. I think I can't remember. I think I contacted you through. Was it Gallifrey Base?
Gallifrey Base.
A private message saying because I was enjoying some of your work and you'd said something nice about one of mine and Cav's
Falls of Santa
stories. I think it was. So I dropped you a line to say thank you very much, and here we are.
I know, it's crazy.
10 years later.
So I first met Mark when I was working at Future. I was working on T3 magazine. Mark came down. Did he come down from Halifax to Bath? Was that how it worked?
Halifax via Manchester.
That's it.
A mutual friend, Steve O'Brien, suggested that I maybe quit my job at the Abbey National in Manchester and moved to Bath and got some work experience on some magazines and get a job in a pub, and maybe I get a job on a magazine.
Which I was going to say was the best way of doing it. So we had a pub called the Garrett's Head that we all used to go to, which is connected to the Bath Theatre Royal. Still there. It's a little posher than it used to be when they employed the likes of Mark. And so Mark got himself a job behind the bar, and that's where I think I met you in the Garrett's Head.
That actually was the first time we ever met. I wasn't working there.
No.
Because Steve introduced us because he thought we should write stuff together.
That's
for
right.
Some reason.
That's right. Well, I think the thing was that I wanted to write stuff and was too lazy to finish it. And you wanted to write stuff and were too lazy to finish it. And together we'd actually get something done. I think that was the way you described it to me. And it worked. Yeah. So we pretty soon started to pitch stuff.
I think the first night we met, we had a working idea for a Doctor Who novel.
We did.
Wow.
Yeah, The Fires of Darkness.
Yes, and so that was the start of it all.
Yeah, so that was a novel we pitched to BBC Books, Justin Richards. It was set in, I think I'd just been to Pompeii, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if the TARDIS was dug up in one of the digs and had been buried there? And then we put this through. We came up with this idea. It was a Fifth Doctor and Perry novel, and we put it through. And exactly the same time, Big Finish had just commissioned The Fires of Vulcan.
Brilliant Steve Lyons.
Yeah, and so because it looked like it might be happening with BBC Books, and then we got an email from Justin going, we have a problem, because Big Finish are doing pretty much a very similar thing, which starts with the TARDIS being dug up in Pompeii, and the Doctor having to go back to find out why it was there. And I mean, the two stories were quite different, but they just both happened on Volcano Day.
Yeah.
Which, of course, then became...
TV have since done it as well.
Yes.
Yep.
With Karen Gillan.
We've got a lot of Doctors running around at the time in Pompeii on Volcano Day. And so, we started with that. And then because of that, I think that's why we got our real link. I mean, you knew Gary. I'd say I met him once, but you knew him beforehand. And so he sort of came, Gary Russell, Big Finish, sort of came to us and realised what had happened and said he felt bad and would we like to pitch something for Big Finish, which we did.
Wow.
Yes, that's the start of it. Although our first thing for Big Finish was a Bernice Summerfield story that Paul Cornell commissioned from us. We took him out for lunch. Yes, the Dead Men Diaries, when Big Finish kind of relaunched Bernice Summerfield. I think we take Paul out for lunch to Pizza Hut in Bath.
Yeah, we did, because we're classy like that.
It probably cost you more to do that than you'd earn a full story for one of those anthologies.
Yeah.
No, it's when the all-you-can buffet was £2 a pop. It was fun.
Yeah. So we took Paul out, we pitched him the story, and then around the same time we were pitching, what was it called? Blood Money, which was the original name for Project Twilight, which was a Seventh Doctor story with Ace.
Set in Vegas.
Because I used to go and work in Vegas every year for T3 for the first week and a half of the year. And we pitched that, and it came back basically with a big fat... Well, actually, it came back saying... Boys, do you know that 7 other people have pitched a vampire story in the last week? And we were like, oh, for heaven's sake. And we didn't think that was going to happen either. And I think it had been.
Well, no, we got Gary effectively. He turned it down initially.
Yeah.
But then, just as we were really starting to get going, writing together, my magazine at Future moved to London. So we've never actually written together when we've been in the same postcode. I don't think.
No.
I moved to London, and I lived quite close to Gary Russell at the time, and so I went round for a couple one afternoon. I suddenly just said, do you know what? I think we should do your vampire story after we thought it had been. And so that was the start of it all. We owe Gary a great deal, I think, just for putting us on that road, and Big Finish in general, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. Without
in those early days.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people in those sort of first couple of years of Big Finish who really owe sort of their career now for and everything we do for Gary sort of pushing us forward. So that's good. But basically, I didn't mean to get into any of that, but that's what this this is all about.
Yeah, and
making it up as we go along.
And it fits the topic as well about writing for licensed fiction, and that's a way in that you both took.
Exactly. And now,
so
fast forward.
Get a job in a pub.
Yeah, get advice in a pub. And that's the only way to do it. So fast forward 21 years. Here we are. Because Mark and I, we worked together for a long time. We haven't written together anything for a while, but we still bounce ideas back and forth and things like that.
Yeah.
George,
I think just when you kind of get, when your careers start to go and you get more commissions and that, I think it's more difficult to, unless you are solely exclusively writing in a partnership and that you only write things together in that partnership and nothing else, coordinating lots of individual projects and joint projects just becomes unmanageable, really. Yeah. So it was quite a natural kind of moving away from the partnership.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we like to maintain it was this big sort of like Lennon and McCartney-esque row, and we sort of threw each other through windows and stuff. But None of that happened. We just.
I remember I've seen you two working together, which was on that Blake 7 novel.
Oh right, yeah.
The writers acting out the scenes, going around like it, and Abel punch like this. Boo, boo, boo.
So
yeah, we were working out the logistics, weren't we?
Of a fight.
Well, if they move down the Liberator corridor that way, Blake and the crew are coming the other.
Because so this was George used to arrange retreats where we'd a number of us. Paul Mars, George's brother was at that one as well. Stuart Douglas. We'd hire a house for a weekend. We'd set up a projector in the lounge and watch cult movies and eat hot dogs and pizzas and various things in the evening. And in the day, we'd all sit at various parts of the house and work. And it was we actually did work as well. It was really a retreat where you actually did work.
That was a brilliant weekend actually, because we broke back of that novel.
Well, yeah. So basically, this was a novel that Mark and I were writing, The Forgotten, which was the first Blake 7 novel for donkey's years, all part of Big Finish's relaunch of the range. And I think we got to the end and realised it wasn't working, and had to throw away the last third of the book.
20,000 words.
Yeah. And because, as Mark said, we never used to really live near each other, and so it was a good chance for us to get our heads down and actually sit there and keep each other going and say, right, are you writing this bit? I'm writing this bit. And yeah, there was a fight, an entire sequence on the Liberator that we just couldn't work out at all. So there was a bedroom. I can't remember whose bedroom it was, one of ours, and we were upstairs and we were literally. I was like, right, I'm Avon, you're Blake. This toilet roll is our gun. How am I going to get the gun to you? And meanwhile, George just comes in with a cup of tea, looks in and goes, okay, as we're blocking out a fight.
True.
Yeah. But we got the book finished that weekend.
Yeah, it worked. It worked.
Yeah. I think that really pushed it towards the finish line, and about a week after that we got it finished. And that was the start of. We did a lot of Blake 7 after that.
Between us.
Really kind of David Richardson was really brought us on, and great stuff.
So what are you working on at the minute, Mark? So we sort of, let's move forward 2 decades. And where are you at the minute? And what have you been working on the last couple of weeks and things?
I've been doing a lot. The last 18 months actually has been a lot of Star Trek stuff for Eagle Moss on the magazines. I've been writing and editing the Starships collection part work, or various issues of it, which is basically a lovely little decast model of a starship and your magazine with everything that you want to know about the ship, how it was designed, kind of its fictional history, its behind the scenes history. So it's kind of swapping a bit of a lane, really, moving from, I still do a lot of Doctor Who stuff, but kind of moving really into the Star Trek world a lot. So the last few weeks, we've got a book coming out later in the year, Star Trek Voyager, a celebration, 25 years, celebrating the 25th anniversary.
Fantastic.
So it's kind of so we're kind of full on with that at the moment. Kind of just going to be interviews with cast, crew. I've been speaking to some absolute heroes and legends of the VFX world, and so it's kind of interesting doing the non-fiction side of Star Trek. Yeah, because I'm quite thinking at the moment I'd like to maybe do some Star Trek fiction, having worked on the non-fiction side of it. But it's great. It's a real privilege to speak to some of these people, and I think it's going to be a great book. So that's kind of where I'm at, and that's what's been keeping me going. Lockdown's, mood-wise, quite tough and finding focus. I think we've talked about that between us, that, finding your focus and your concentration, but feeling, I suppose, blessed is the word, to actually have work on. It's such tough times in the industry, and to be working for a couple of companies that, managing to, keep heads above water is an absolute blessing. So I'm quite behind with work because I had a few weeks where just mental health has been shocking. I don't think it's any secret that I do have my, the occasional battle's the wrong word. It's too dramatic, but so trying to find your place in that and the ongoing situation to keep the work going. So I'm a little bit behind, but everyone's very understanding, and we've got a few other jobs on as well, a couple of script jobs as well. So so just managing to keep going, that's all we can do, really.
Well, exactly. We were talking before we were on live how it's sometimes you've got to allow yourself to have those moments as well, because I think we're so used to, all of us, of battling deadlines and getting stuff work done and getting through a certain amount of work a day. And then suddenly we've got families at home, we've got other distractions, you've got the news, which, let's face it, this last week has not been pleasant to watch. And that kind of thing plays heavily on any kind of creative endeavour, I think. I think, and it should, because obviously it should play out in what you're writing as well, and it should affect the fictional worlds that you're in. So I think it's right and it's proper for us to all admit that we're all human. These
absolutely.
Definitely.
Because when you get into things like, you get Twitter and you get Facebook and Instagram, and it's that thing of always putting the best face forward, and and look at me, everything's fine, I can cope with stuff and that kind of thing. And I think at the minute, actually, most people are struggling. So if you do that, you look false anyway. I think it's the time. If there's any time we can be honest, we can do it now. Yeah,
and we've talked on here before about that feelings of imposter syndrome, haven't we? That we all get, and I absolutely recognise what you're talking about, Mark. It's that sense of how you start to question what you're doing, don't you? You go, well, how can I write this fun adventure story when that's happening in the world? How the two things? You have to have a different perspective and a different headspace to be able to exist in that happy place. And at the same time, if you're writing something darker, well, also you're writing about darkness and you're seeing that kind of difficult stuff happening on the news as well, and it's putting you into a constant headspace where you're not in a good way. So I do absolutely recognise it.
And I think about now, has it become more important to find ways to reflect these big things going on in the world in what we're writing? Science fiction has always been a platform for reflecting where we are socially, I think. And obviously, you want to write fun, rollicking, pot-boiling adventures, but when you start to think of a social conscience, should we be starting to reflect it more in our work? It's a fine line. It's a very fine line, I think.
Yeah, and it's something I've been actually, the thing I've been working on this week is Engine Ward, which talked about before, is a science fiction comic set in the far future, in a colony that's divided, and there's the social oppression and inequality and all sorts of stuff going on in there, and it has been quite hard to get my head into that space where I go, am I writing about a fantasy world? Am I writing about real life? How do they mirror each other? Am I the right person to be telling that part of the story? It's just this last issue that I've been working on has taken me longer to do than usual because I've got all those questions circling.
We've had some questions come in from people watching as well. Emma Expired Milk, so I can use your name now, Emma, there's no escape, asks what are aspects you're enjoying about writing non-fiction, Mark, as opposed to fiction?
It's the detail and placing, because we're delving into the on the magazines, we've delved into behind the scenes history of Star Trek, but on the book as well, we're delving into that, and it's placing these things that happened to somebody in a place in time. It's 2.5 decades ago since Voyager started, so I love placing the human story into that history. We've had some lovely stories that have come from some of these interviews, and but just on the magazine, speaking to some absolute legends who I fan worship, Mike Okuda and Rick Sternbach for their Star Trek: The Next Generation technical manual, and I've interviewed both gents for the magazine, and John Eves, who's another legend of production illustration, Jim Martin, but just speaking to just that, it's the details and putting these events into a historical setting, but with a human angle as well. And I think that's how I approached Doctor Who: The Complete History, artwork I co-edited with John Ainsworth. There's a human story in these that I think it's really interesting to bring out in amongst all this production kind of trivia that such and such happened on such a date, the scene was shot then. But it's about inserting the human story into that. What was Kate Mulgrew's experience like on that particular day as she was moving through 7 seasons of Voyager, for example. So it's that, I think, that I like about non-fiction writing.
And I don't know about you, but especially if when we worked on things like Whoology and Wit and Wisdom, obviously, you know, there was fictional aspects of it, but there was a lot of trawling through production notes and things like that.
Yeah.
And they always gave me ideas for stories, or, you know, digging out those facts, and it sparked the imagination as well when it comes to coming with fiction. I think, you know, most of the time there's so many little nuggets there that you've forgotten, or you never knew, or whatever, that suddenly can spin off. Especially, I suppose, with the stuff you're doing with Star Trek as well, you're learning about how the ships work. You know, you're learning about really the universe.
Yeah, but the great thing about the ships is there's this fantastically consistent, cohesive and consistent fictional universe into which these ships operate, alongside the behind-the-scenes history of how they were designed. I mean, I'm finding out about, you know, the number of times the Merchantman ship from Star Trek 3 was redressed and kit-bashed into different ships over the years.
Right.
You know, it was used 5 times at least, and you know, how other ships crop up, and just tracing that is interesting. But there's one thing I always say about working on the complete history that is a great example of this. The Patrick Troughton story, the Macra Terror, from, you know, 50 odd years ago. They had this new monster, the Macra, a giant crab that was basically made in the back of a car. I think it was a Mini, and they were really keen that it was going to be a big new monster. So there was a memo, a request for a photo shoot down at Shawcraft Models, I think, with some alien rocks and some pretty girls. The photo shoot happened. Then there was a thing of the photo shoot happened, but without the rocks or the girls. And what I find about that is that was somebody's Monday morning. Giant alien crab, rock, and some models. That's somebody's Monday morning, and going, and that's, to me, the human line that you draw between these events. It's not just production kind of things listed in rote.
Yeah.
That's the story for me.
Well, it's like that famous picture of Terry Malloy standing with his Davros mask on, you know, in his t-shirt, and And I think I showed both of you guys. There's a great Rolling Stones cover from the time of Return of the Jedi, which is Carrie Fisher in Leia's metal bikini, with Darth Vader holding a ghetto blaster, a Gamorrean guard holding a beach ball, and an Ewok, I don't know, having an ice cream or something, on a beach in front of the sea. And at what point do they think this was a good idea? But it's Carrie's giving it her all. I don't know about the guy in the Gamorrean suit. He's quite camp, actually, to be fair, in the pose he's got with his beach ball. But Carrie's giving it her all there. Matthew says he's going to add Engine Ward to his pull list.
Thank you, Matthew.
So, Matthew, we'll make sure we get the links in the show notes.
I'll put them in the show notes.
Engine Ward. Sarah, my assistant from the States, has arrived. Sarah, hello. She says, is that the Wolfman on your glass? It is indeed. There he is.
They're brilliant, these glasses, aren't they? I've got the mummy one.
So these are from, what are they called?
Super 7.
Super 7 in San Francisco. And last San Diego, it was the last San Diego, when we could still go, there was a pop-up shop where they were selling these and other Universal stuff, a Halloween shop they were doing in July. And we went with Mike Sclane from Lucasfilm, the three of us, me, Mike and George, to go and queue up, because Mike's a big Universal fan too, and we were going to go and queue up and get our glasses, and then we took one look at the queue and went, oh, we're not doing that.
And this was like 10 p.m. at night, and the queue was round the block.
Yeah. And
they closed at midnight, and we could tell the queue was over 2 hours long.
Yeah. So then a wonderful man at Lucasfilm who went into and got them for us from the store and then sent them on.
Sent them on. Yeah,
and Brett. So I've got the full set, which every time the children go towards, I'm like, ugh. But obviously you can use my mummy glass.
They can't use mine.
No, it's true.
I've been strict on that. This is Dad's glass.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a nicer person. I think
probably true.
Yeah, let's face it. Would you let me use your mummy glass, George?
I'd have to think about it.
Really?
But probably because I know that if you smashed it, you could give me yours.
That's never going to happen.
So what have you been working on, Cav? You haven't told us yet.
There's nothing I can really talk about, really. Okay. So there's my novel that I've been working on, which I've been trying to sing when I do a couple of hours in the morning and then move on to something else. But that was working fine. But then we've had to change our day to fit in with the girls' school days. And so our lunch hours come forward. And so it's not working so quite as well now, because I do my 2-hour block, finish that, and then before I know it, I'm sort of going to lunch. And so I'm having to rethink about that. But I've got 55, 56,000 words down of it. So, it's good, and deadline's still a couple of months off. But so that's good. That's going ahead. I've been working on Shadow Service, which is my book coming out from Vault, which I'm now starting to write issue 7 of the 10. And Corinne's working on the art for issue 3. Just saw the cover for issue 3 today, which is looking amazing. And then there's other stuff there's High Republic stuff that obviously I can never talk about. And there's various other things as well, but none of it I can talk about. It's really frustrating. But yeah, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of moving parts this last couple of weeks, because also things are coming back online, which is great. Things that were paused for the pandemic are now starting to come back, but obviously that means that everything's coming back with it, including the deadlines that were in the past and still are in the past. And
I've had similar this week with a thing which was, you were doing this story for us. We still want that story, but not for a few months. We need you to do this one instead.
Yeah.
And okay. I'll hurriedly put that together for you.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful to still have these opportunities coming back. That's the thing.
Totally.
I did also want to give a shout out for something that's happened this week from Brad Hoyt, who is the composer who writes the Newbury and Hobbs music. He's just released the 3rd album this week as well, based on the Immorality Engine, 3rd Newbury and Hobbs book.
Excellent.
So I'll put link in the show notes, and that you can hear the single free on YouTube. We should have had it as like musical bed or something, but it's probably beyond us technologically.
I've got a couple of more questions and comments in. Sarah says, I'm totally biased, but Shadow Service is badass, and I can't wait for everyone to read it. I think actually the 4 of us in this conversation with Sarah are probably some of the only people in the world who've read it so far, so it's lovely to hear that, Sarah. Thank you very much. Sarah, one of the things she does for me is that she reads everything as I write them. So because I've got really bad spelling, so she also checks stuff like that. And also
I don't remember that.
No, of course you don't. I used to be an editor. It's terrifying. The other thing is that Shadow Service is set in the UK, but a lot of the stuff I write is obviously set in the States. So Sarah checks for Briticisms, which there are a lot of usually, and how we. And things that I would slip in, and I know completely what they mean, but for an American audience, they're going, what now? So she's so useful in that manner and makes everything better. Emma says, well, I'm sad High Republic got delayed. I'm excited the next Thrawn book got moved to come out a bit earlier after its initial delay. I can't begin to imagine how complex the publishing world is. You have no idea at the minute, Emma. Everything is...
especially at the moment.
Especially with comics, because everything comics is, had a few months where nothing was sold, and now we're trying to work out when things are coming out. I think for both Engine Ward and Shadow Service, we've been reasonably okay. I think Shadow Service is a couple of weeks later than it should have been.
Mine moved 3 weeks, but I think it's they had to try and keep it in a certain window because it's tied to the signs of the zodiac.
Yeah.
So I know the guys moved heaven and earth to make sure it could stay in that slot.
Yeah. And obviously, the High Republic's been moved from August this year to January the next. And Matthew says, if you can answer, Cav, which usually means I can't, was the delay in the High Republic novels connected to a delay in the comics? No, it was connected to a delay in the entire industry. So we've all been carrying on working. So it's not that we stopped work on the High Republic. We're now working on, beyond the books that are coming out. So first of all, but it's just from a pure logistics point of view of getting these products out to people and people being able to buy them and go to shops and all those things have been comfortable, and so there's so many different reasons behind these decisions, and it was obviously a decision that we as the writers and the story group didn't really have much to say in it. It's purely from a point of view of getting getting the products into people's hands. So it's upsetting, obviously, that there's a delay, but hopefully it will all be worth it as well. Sarah says she's learnt so much for working with me. Did you hear that, boys?
How much are you paying her?
Well, I literally pay her.
Oh well, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I didn't think that one through very well.
She's. I might have to give her a rise after this. If you don't know what that means, Sarah, it means nothing at all. I've also noticed I've started using Britishism and not even realising it lately. Fantastic. I'll get you spelling things in the British way soon. That's my aim in life. Although my spelling's awful now, even worse, because I flip between Americanisms and Britishisms in the writing. It's awful. I have no idea. My spell checks, I have no idea who I am half the time.
On Star Trek, it's all American spellings.
Yeah.
For the mags and the books, yeah. So always go through doing a proper spell check, yeah.
Yeah.
I get the mickey taken out of me by the guys at Vault who we have a message board for the ongoing series, and we kind of put stuff in there, and they all say, as George would say, I'm chuffed with this. I'm like, that's not weird. They're like, no. So British.
I know. It's that thing as well when you mention torches. He pulls out a torch and the artist is drawing a flaming stick. And he's like, no, it's just a flashlight. That's all it means. There are so many. There are so many moments like that. Because it's interesting on Shadow Service, because obviously I'm working with an American artist on a series that's based in Britain. So there's been cases when she's looked up things like London and she's found pictures of Ontario, and I'm going, that's the wrong London. It's just and I wouldn't have noticed on some of it. It's only because like the lights are slightly odd on the streets. I'm like, no, that doesn't look like London. And it's all those things, and the things I'd never thought I would have to provide pictures of. Because when I describe a high street, just a normal sort of London suburban high street, the kind of thing you see in Lewisham where you used to live, Mark, and that kind of thing. Yeah. It's just, I know exactly what that looks like. But obviously, current searching for high streets in Britain, which could be anything from, and so I'm having to take pictures on Google Maps and things, on Google Street View, and sort of go, know this. And it's like, whoever took that picture that day is not good. Wouldn't have believed that's going to be used as reference for a supernatural spy comic.
I loved a couple of recce's I've done for Doctor Who comic strips. I did a full recce at the London at the National Gallery.
Yeah.
And took photos for Staz Johnson. I did Highgate Cemetery as well.
That's a brilliant
horror. It was, and just doing loads of pictures so I could, so we can just get it absolutely spot on. I love doing that. And
there was there was a bit of controversy over whether the barriers in the London Underground were there in the story you were writing.
In the Pestilent Heart, we have scenes in the ticket hall at Brixton Station in 1971, and somebody online, I can't remember who it was. It was somebody in the comics world, I think, said, ticket barriers in 1971. I'm not sure that's. And if you go, there's a fantastic London Transport Museum picture resource that's there online, and they had pictures from the opening of Brixton Station in 1970-71. They had pictures of the ticket hall with those almost modern-looking moving ticket barriers. So we were able to go, ha ha ha. I wasn't having a go. I just thought it might be something to do with the plot. It's like,
But it is interesting that these are the lengths we go to get these things right, isn't it? Both in original stuff and in tie-in work.
And the rabbit holes you go down. Today I spent far too long finding out about the different fabrics that Lando Calrissian has in his wardrobe. And I had no need to. But I was researching a particular fabric that a certain uniform is made from. And that just opened an entire world of how many silks there are in a galaxy far, far away, and all the different. The amount of textiles they've got on that place is quite incredible.
I expect to see you wearing a silk cape soon.
I've got, who says I'm not wearing? Well, I'm not. Obviously, you can see it. Yes, but soon it's going to happen. I made a promise last year at Celebration that I'd turn up in a Dooku cloak, and I never did, and people haven't let me forget that. But have you seen how much those things are? They're ridiculous. So yes, so that was my. I lost a good. There's me going. I'm very busy at the minute. I lost a good 3/4 an hour scrolling through Wikipedia, going, "Oh, look at that! Look at this!"
I love Wikipedia. It is a rabbit hole, though.
It is. I love it when you. There's a TARDIS wiki as well, and I love it when you go and you use it as a research tool. I always use these things as like the starting point, and then like Wikipedia, and go back and try and find the primary sources. Yeah. But then you read something and go, this sounds like a real humble brag, but it sort of is, I suppose. You read something and go, well, hang on a minute. Oh no, I made that up, and that really happened to me today. I was looking at something on Wikipedia, and to find out, someone went, "Oh, that works perfectly for what I'm doing," and there was a reason for that, because 2 years ago I made it up, and but I'd completely forgotten. So thank you, Wikipedia.
Oh, I love it on TARDIS Wiki when you find stubs for characters that you created, and there's an entry for Tibbsy the cat on TARDIS Wiki. There's
an entry for George Mann, because George Mann exists in canon.
Yeah, in a story called Selfie, and you're in it as well, aren't you? There's Cavan Scott in canon as well.
Rachel drew us into the selfies with the Doctor, and so we got on TARDIS Wiki. There is a entry for the fictional version of Cavan Scott and fictional version of George Mann, which is just bizarre.
The Star Trek Wiki is great. Memory Alpha.
Yes, I have no reason professionally to be there, and yet I quite often am, just trawling through things.
I had to go this week. I've been on Wikipedia this week because I'm working. I can't say what it is, but I'm working on a project where I've had to map out a character's timeline in immense detail to find out where some particular events could be inserted. And it's one of those things where I've ended up drawing flowcharts and reading around, like you say, reading the entry and then going deeper and going and looking at wider source material. It's fun, but it's time consuming.
It really is. Yeah. But for all the good reasons, all the right reasons. So, if you've just joined us, hello there. We have a guest with us today, a special guest, a very special guest, Mark Wright. He's paying me.
Good evening.
Good evening. And we are talking about various, carrying on from the conversation we had last time when we were talking about writing for licensed properties, and the various different universes that we've written in together and that we write apart as well. So, as we said earlier on, Mark and I have written together quite extensively. Majority of the time, I would say Doctor Who, but although we did a Highlander together, we did Blake Seven, as we said. Yes, Highlander was
which was interesting.
Iris Wild Time as well, yeah.
That's right, which had started our producing careers at the finish.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of Blake Seven, actually.
We did. Yeah. Well, in a way, because when that novel we were talking about earlier on, we thought was going to be the only Blake Seven we'd ever do. And little did we know that a couple of years later, I'd be producing the series, you'd be writing the anniversary story, it's been crazy. But if you're anyone out there,
we did a tweet along of the anniversary story.
Yes,
somebody online organised. Lily May Sharrett. It was Fab, me, and John Ainsworth, and Simon Power, the sound designer. We were all tweeting in. It was quite. I found it quite a lot of pressure actually to come up with insightful things, but generally then I just got to the point where I was just enjoying the story and going, "Yeah, you give it to him, Jenna."
I don't remember that part in the story, but okay, you're right.
I was big fight with Travis. But that was fun. But yeah, we did a lot of Blake Seven.
We did, really, yeah. In that time when Big Finish were just sort of like starting to stretch out a bit, and we did the Liberator Chronicles and then the full cast as well. Emma has commented, because of writing fiction, I now know too much about medieval waste management. It's a miracle humanity survived. Well, we're doing ever so well. But I love that stuff. That's the stuff I love about history. I am quite fascinated by historical toilets, which is probably something I shouldn't say. Again, we mentioned Pompeii earlier on. You go to Pompeii and there's the sort of the toilets with the strange brushes that they it's weird.
They had like sponges on the end, and they shared them.
They shared the sponge. I pitched an entire kids book about poo once, about the history of poo. And it never went anywhere. And one day I'm going to return. One day I'm going to return to the history of poo, because I think I think kids will love it, and also it's really interesting in a very strange kind of way.
a book Ed Reardon would pitch on Radio 4. Cameron Scott's Book of Historical Toilets.
Oh no, but it has to be also be about poo. Because obviously that is not just the toilets. You could do.
You could go like pooing around the universe, like pooing on different starships. We've seen the Mandalorian.
I did have this week have to find out what they call the toilet in Star Wars, and I can now completely forgotten now I've said it, but I had to look it up for a gag this week.
It's all sorts. There's Demolition Man, isn't there?
Yeah.
The famous thing. What does Jean-Luc Picard? what does he do?
We don't know. There is Star Trek V. There's the brilliant sight gag of the do not use facilities in space dock when they're in the brig.
Yes.
There is Kirk sits on the loo. He opens it.
Anyway, we've gone down a strange path.
Well, no, we have,
so to speak.
I could forget. I could carry on. I could talk about the toilets in Japan when they have the gadget toilets that you could. When I was working on T3, we talked about earlier on. We used to go over to Japan and we used to see gadgets, and there was entire toilet showrooms when you could go in, and it would be different toilets for different things. I mean, they were all from the same thing. But then you'd have toilets you could connect your music to, and that would vibrate in time with your music. You could have, these days you can have screens coming out the side of it, like Captain Picard's chair. So yeah, there's Emma's coming saying vac tube. That's exactly what it is. Sorry, yes, it's a vac tube in Star Wars. Thank you very much, Emma. Yes. So, is there a toilet in the TARDIS? Have we ever heard about a toilet in the TARDIS? There must be.
It must be.
It'd be huge.
There's multiple toilets. There's going to be.
Yeah.
Toilets from throughout history.
Are you saying the Doctor collects toilets?
I'm saying that there's no evidence to show that he doesn't.
That's true. This is where we've got to, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
It's very, very highbrow.
It really is. It really is. Quick, George, think of a question for Mark.
So we talk a bit more about licensed fiction. I think we've talked a little bit about how you guys got into it recently, and then we covered some of that last time as well. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you both is, what do you think are the benefits of writing? Well, you do both sides of the coin, the benefits and the pitfalls of writing well-known characters.
You're comfortable with them, which can be a two-edged sword, because I've always said on Blake 7 audios, I could write Liberator flight deck dialogue all day.
Right.
So you've got the voices of those characters. I feel comfortable writing that dialogue, but then you kind of get too comfortable, and you're not making it dynamic enough or interesting enough because you're just comfortable with this dialogue. I think you can either sometimes know your character too well, maybe.
That's interesting.
That you don't write them as dynamically enough as you should, perhaps.
Is that in the sense that you stop taking them on the journey they were on because you've got them as kind of flash frozen at a moment? It's like, we all know how the Third Doctor is, for example, so we'll write the story like that without thinking about, actually, we need to keep pushing him on as part of his ongoing character story.
But I think there's a very tricky balancing act of making something. With Doctor Who, you're writing to fit when you're doing the audio or a novel or a book. Novels are books, Mark. It's got to feel authentic to the era, but it's got to be an interesting story that's got some progression to it. There's got to be some kind of character progression to it as well. So I think that's a very fine line to tread. But hopefully we've all managed to do it. But yeah, sometimes you find yourself just kind of falling back on that comfort blanket of certain phrases, or I think I counted in the Blake 740th the other week when we listened to it, 5 well-nows from Avon in part 1. And you've got to earn those moments.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think there's things we all know for these characters. So like the Brigadier in Doctor Who, only said 5 rounds rapid once, but it's become a catchphrase, and so it'd be too easy sometimes to write a variation on that, because then you can go, oh, how clever I am. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, because I think some of the stuff I've done and some of the stuff we did together, Mark, and George as well, when we were doing the Titan comics, you're so concerned about making it authentic, and you want someone to say, and they did with the Forgotten, the Blake Seven novel, that it felt like a novelization of a lost episode, and that's exactly what we wanted to do, because we wanted to, it was the first novel in 30 years or something as Blake Seven, so we wanted to make it as authentically Blake Seven as we humanly could. But then you had other people who would turn around and say, well, that's great, but I wanted something new. I wanted something different. Right. It didn't push anything along. It didn't surprise me because, it was exactly what we expected to see.
I think The Forgotten was our target novelisation, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly what it was.
But do you remember when we did Blake's story? And there was a lot of online discussion about how we completely got Blake wrong. There's a lot of people who said this wasn't the Blake I recognise, this is not how he would. And I think I don't know what it was, we kind of showed him as a broken man after losing the Liberator.
Yeah.
But to us, it was his journey. When you've lost this great symbol, when you've lost the Liberator and you can't find your way back, what's it going to do to an idealistic freedom fighter like Blake? He's lost everything.
Yeah.
And I think we wanted to show that it can break you. But he comes back stronger at the end. He's come full circle. So, and it's not that people just did point and say, you got Blake wrong. And it's not that we got him wrong. We just had a different thought process about...
You took him on a journey.
It's a different interpretation.
Yeah, and it's not, there's no right or wrong. So I think that's interesting that there was a portion of fandom that kind of said, no, you completely misrepresented the character.
And I think it's also...
I think it's interesting that you can get comfortable with characters and then people don't latch into what you're trying to do with them.
Yeah, and I suppose that is, it's not really a pitfall, it's something you have to be wary of, and it's something you have to think about, because Blake Seven had it, Star Wars had it, Doctor Who had it. You have a period of time where the things that are keeping it going are the books or the audios or the comics and fan fiction, and the fans themselves are keeping this flame alive, and they have an idea. Yeah, and when you get something like The Last Jedi, which obviously was massively divisive, some people, that wasn't their idea of what Luke would end up like. For me, it was absolutely my idea of what Luke would end up by, because
me too, actually.
No matter how much I love the EU, there was elements of that I didn't like where Luke went in that series. So for me, I recognised that character and I could see the through line. I can absolutely get that other people can't, and for very good reason. I wouldn't want to belittle that, because their view of the character is different, and that's the tightrope you have to watch and walk when you're writing fiction in someone else's universe. Is that you want to tell the story you want to tell. You also want to be true to the universe and the people who are are the stewards of that universe. But then you have the fans as well, who have so much investment into it, and you can't please everyone.
You've got to respect it.
You've got to respect it, and that's the thing as well. So when we had those conversations about Blake, both Mark and I were very careful of trying not to get into a flame war or get into anything, because in their mind, absolutely, we got Blake wrong. In our mind, that was the story one wanted to tell, and we got Blake how we thought Blake would be. And so, as we've talked about before on this, George, it's how you approach those conversations.
And I think there's a really interesting thing about when you're writing as well. I mean, for example, you take Star Wars. If you're writing a story that takes place during the original trilogy, then of course you want to be true to those characters as they are in that original trilogy, as they're portrayed on screen. But something like The Last Jedi wasn't doing that. It wasn't a new Star Wars film set in that trilogy. It was a film made 30 years later, 40 years later, and it's put in. It's reflecting the current kind of situation in the world as well. It's kind of what we were talking about earlier. You don't write in a bubble. So when you're writing a new story, you're taking a character on a journey, and for me, what they did with Luke was it was indicative of the fact that not all of our heroes from the 70s have survived intact.
No.
It's heroes they're not heroes forever. They tend to, and if you look at history, that's true as well. Heroes weren't heroes for their entire life. No. They had moments of glory, and then they either died in battle, or they wasted away, or they went back to their comfortable life and lived a happy existence for the rest of time. And what we remember is the big events. And I think for me, that was looking at Luke in that context as well. So it's very much, it was looking at Star Wars in the context of the modern world. And I think that's an important thing to do when we're looking at the time fiction as well, is to go, well, what are we trying to achieve with, what's the purpose of this? Is it to tell an authentic story like you were doing with The Forgotten? Or is it to say, actually, I'm moving the story on now? I've been asked to do that. I've been asked to write a 13th Doctor story is going to be very different from a First Doctor story.
And always should be. Yeah.
And it should be. Yeah, exactly.
And I think any series that has, like Star Wars, like comics are different if you're talking about the big two, because obviously the characters never, they develop and then they reboot, and they develop and then they reboot. But when you're telling a story of a character who can age, that throws so many different things up, because you also have the situation that if you treated James Bond as one character all the way through, and if you think for those sort of like 40 years, Bond has been fighting the same battles pretty much every day of his life, and again in Star Wars, we go through the Empire and then you go to the First Order, and again you have similar things in Blake Seven. Paul Darrow wrote his Lucifer trilogy, which showed the galaxy hadn't changed that much. The Federation had formed into something else, and there was all these factions. And people say, well, that's very depressing, because that means that the battles don't end, and it keeps going on. Yeah. But again, that's how life is. And let's face it, we've seen over the last week the same battles that are being fought today as being fought in the 60s, that were being fought in the 30s, that were being fought in the the 19th
previous
century.
Centuries.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So history does repeat, and I think it's the difference between wanting your fictional world to stay the same, and also wanting it to move on, and it's a really tough line to follow through. For anyone, but it's fun.
Yeah,
that's why we do it. We have reached 53 minutes in the show.
Wow.
We have been wibbling on. And we've got a couple more comments. Matthew says, people have an image of a character in their minds. Luke as the bold adventurer unites the green, but that isn't the story. George actually tells at the end he throws the green away, the green lightsaber, which he does, exactly. I mean, that's the whole point at the end of Return of the Jedi. He rejects the lightsaber. Emma says, expired milk. Sorry, Emma, I'm just calling you Emma now. I'd like it, I feel like I've crossed the line. I really love what Claudia Gray's Bloodline did for contextualizing the sequel trilogy. Yeah, exactly. This is what.
I've read that.
This is. Oh, it's amazing. This is what makes why I love time fiction so much. Is that it offers it expands. It should always increase the world that it's in, as well as celebrate it. So talking about celebrating, look at that segue. Look at that.
Slick, very slick.
I know. It was until I just completely forgot what I was going to say next. Geek out. Geek out. What are we geeking out with at this moment? What have we been loving? What has been affecting us? What have we all been listening to, watching, listening? Yes, Mark, you're our guest. You should go first.
A few things as a family, we've kind of been keeping ourselves entertained in lockdown by doing a Marvel rewatch, which we've just completed from Iron Man through, and just swept along by them. It's interesting watching them in close quarters to each other, and seeing all the connections again close at hand. So that's been great. So the three of us, my wife and my stepson, we've all been giving them a score out of 10 at the end, and it's a pretty high benchmark, actually. Pretty much 8 and over all the way through.
What scored the highest?
I was about to ask the same question.
Avengers Assemble, not the Avengers, Endgame, they were 10s. Infinity War 10, Black Panther 10. So yeah, a few 10s along the way, but Avengers Assemble was the first 10.
And have any of the films split the family? Not to like a Civil War type split.
Reenacting.
I mean, I could do this all day.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, really? Okay.
Wasn't
right.
Guardians of the Galaxy didn't land for me this time.
Okay.
Oh, really?
No, I was like, it felt like it was dating a little bit, and I don't know why, because I loved it first time round. Right. So we finished that. We've moved on to a Fast and Furious rewatch, which is just
the glory,
hilarious and hysterical. But the thing's been keeping me going reading wise. I've started to read of the George Simenon's Maigret novels, which the Parisian detective of 75 novels that Simenon wrote over the years. I'm only 6 into my read. Penguin have done some fantastic, which I have one here, beautiful reprints of all of them. And I've just finished Maigret and the Headless Corpse, which is a fantastic title. They're brilliant. They're just observations of human nature and him just working out the relationships and drinking a lot of cognac, Calvados, white wine, and beer. So the Maigret books, they're fantastic.
Have you seen the Rowan Atkinson TV versions?
Yeah.
Not keen.
They didn't like. They looked great. I can see what they were trying to do, but I don't think Atkinson, fantastic actor, he's not Maigret. And that's again, it's that view of a character.
Yeah, sure.
The Michael Gambon ones, the ones from the 60s, more of my idea of Maigret. But, Atkinson was obviously a fan of the character. And I love Madame Maigret, his wife.
Yes, she's the best thing in it, I think.
It was Lucy Cohu in the Atkinson ones. And, she's brilliant. And I think there's a whole range of stories you could do, licensed stories about Madame Maigret. Because she's always on the phone when he's phoning. Go, are you coming home for lunch? No. It's like not solving her own crimes. It could be like Mrs. Columbo. Yeah. Investigate.
Brilliant.
What about you, George?
Me, so watching wise, I finished Luke Cage, which I absolutely adored. Went straight into Iron Fist, which I absolutely adored, and I'd been set up really to hate it. Everyone had told me, but actually, Cav aside, but a lot of people I know had said Iron Fist is not great. You might as well skip over it. I'm doing all the Netflix Marvels TV series in a row, but I really enjoyed Iron Fist. And I think partly it might have been going into it with low expectations, but I thought it was great. So I'm now nearly finished the Defenders as well.
I love the Defenders. Isn't there about 3 episodes where it's just all of them in a Chinese restaurant?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
We spent a very nice weekend with Finn Jones, didn't we, Cav, at a convention?
We did, didn't we?
Did you?
I'd forgotten about that.
One of the Utopias, yeah, because he was Joe Jones's grandson in Sarah Jane Adventures.
Really?
So he was there with Katie and Stuart Bevan, and we were just talking about Game of Thrones, and he was lovely.
And the funny thing was that they were acting like a family all weekend, so they were eating together. And so it was like, and every time we went into the restaurant, there they would be as a little 3. And so it was like, him being out with his grandparents. He was. I think because he just started doing Game of Thrones, hadn't he? Or he was in Game of Thrones had started by then, hasn't it?
Right,
so
yes,
I'm Fist. I've yet to watch the second series. We're about to get into that. I think all of those series they could have had a few episodes shorter, and I think that would have helped.
I agree with that. 10 episodes maybe instead of 13.
Yeah, and I think it's all of them. They pretty much have a little. I mean, it's still for me the Luke Cage and the Jessica Jones are the ones I love the most. But even those, you could probably lose a couple in the middle. I
really enjoyed the Defenders. Really liked the Defenders.
Yeah,
and that's only 8 as well, isn't it?
Exactly. I think that's it. Didn't have those moments when it's. I'm not saying they tread water. They don't. There's a lot going on, but I think perhaps you don't need it to have so much going on. If you know what I mean.
I hope they do more with them. I hope they go back to them as part of Plus.
I'd love to, again, I know George hasn't got this far on, but knowing how like Luke Cage ended and how Jessica ended, there are more stories, and with Luke Cage especially, it was supposed to be 3 years, and so they do leave it on a moment when you're going, okay, and then he turns up very briefly in Jessica, and you actually I just want to stay with him now so I can find out what's going on. I think he's amazing. I think I'd watch Luke Cage movies, every every day. Well, not every day, that'll get meant much, but you know what I mean. We've had a few people come on and tell us what they've been doing. Emma has been watching all of Avatar, The Last Airbender. It's embarrassing how many things I didn't pick up on. Remember when I was a kid? Oh, that's the joy of going back to an old series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it? Sarah, it says someone else geeking on a Marvel rewatch. I'm not alone in my nerdiness. And Matthew says no, that they did a rewatch too. Matthew's also looking forward to diving into Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnson. Sorry, Queen's Peril. That's the
second one, isn't it?
Yeah, Queen's Peril. There we go. And Sarah is looking forward to E.K.'s book as well. Emma's going to be starting Queen's Peril as well, hopefully this weekend, so I don't get caught off guard by Shadowfall. Because when it rains, it pours with these book releases. Well, I think we are going to see a lot of books coming very, very, very quickly.
I've been reading a couple. I've read 2 books since we were last here. The Killing Light, which is the 3rd book in Mike Cole's kind of fantasy trilogy. They're quite short for fantasy books, actually, 250 pages each, which is nice digestible size. And they're really great, actually. They're kind of the journey of a young woman who. Both a sexual awakening and her coming of age and becoming a hero who ends up putting on this giant mech suit, basically. It's kind of a medieval style fantasy, but she ends up putting on a mech suit and fighting demons, which is very cool. And The Night Cache, which is just a little novella by Andy Duncan, which was really interesting, good fun. It's like a ghost story of sorts, but about geocaching. About kind of going around and finding geocaches, and then the 2 women going around together, becoming, it's the story of their love affair, but also kind of one woman getting dragged into the other woman's hobby, and then the woman disappears, but she keeps leaving geocaches, and is she still alive? Is she dead? Where these messages coming from? So it's really interesting, fun little novella. Cav.
Hello.
What have you been reading or watching?
I have been reading. So I just switched away from you so I could find it because I realised I didn't have it on my desk.
Sorry.
So you caught me completely unawares there.
I apologise.
No, it's fine. I was trying to be clever with technology and it just did not work. I've been reading these little fellas. So this is an amazing magazine. Now I think it's pronounced. Is it It's the plant, isn't it? Hellebore,
I think.
Yeah. So, if you don't know, it's a herb that was said to be used in witches' ointment that allowed them to fly on broomsticks. These are folklore magazines that have been published over here in the UK. They are absolutely beautiful. Really. I'm now can't remember how to work a camera. There we go. First issue was all about sacrifices. The second issue is all about summoning the wild gods. There's an amazing interview with Alan Moore in the second issue with a fantastic bit of artwork.
As the Green Man.
They're beautiful. They're just really nice. Really nice artifacts as well. And, if you're into folklore and folk horror, I recommend those. I'll put the link in. The editor is from Bristol, a local person from me, so that's good. I've been listening to Kevin Hearn's Hounded series on Audible, which is a urban fantasy series about a druid living in America today. They've been great. And then it's a complete side, because of everything that's been going on, I've been reading So You Want to Talk About Race, which you probably can't see on my phone there. There we go. By Ejoma Alu, hopefully I pronounced that right, which is, it just questions everything you think about race. I think it's one of the things I've been taking from everything that's been going on, that I need to learn a lot more about what is going on with my friends and their lives. So those have been the things that I've been reading, and I've been building.
Oh, here we go.
I've started to build the Lego T-Rex.
That's amazing.
That's 3 bags so far, and it will eventually look like...
Big, isn't it?
It's big. Eventually look a bit like that, and you build the gates behind it, and then if you turn the gates round, it's got all the scenes from the film in the gates, including a Jeff Goldblum with his shirt open. The best thing...
I need some new Lego.
The best thing about this is that in the middle of that, I will never be able to see him again if I take it away. There is a tiny frog, because life finds a way. So right in the middle, you put a frog. But it's just got such good joints.
I need some new Lego. I don't have a kit to build.
Have you seen the haunted house? The haunted house that
they've
done.
I've seen it. Yeah, that looks amazing.
It looks so good.
Because I've got the Razor Crest coming in the autumn.
Yes.
I also. So I'm having to wait for that.
Yeah.
I'm itching to do another build. I think the last one I did was Ecto 1.
That's a good build. It's there.
It is. My pride in my Lego in the Lego collection.
Oh, look at that! That's amazing.
There we go.
Oh, the good.
Wow.
There we are.
That deserves a round of applause.
Yes, you see, this was the set I did not get, which surprised a lot of people.
That's gorgeous.
I know.
Yeah. And how does the ejector seat go?
Ejector seat?
I won't do it because I will.
You're joking.
There's an ejector seat.
I'm doing Sean Connery.
Oh, here we go. Is it?
Hey.
Oh no! I've just pulled that off. I can't remember how the ejector seat comes out. That's really poor of me. No, but it does. The whole thing, it goes. Whoop.
Marvelous.
Yeah. So that's the. Well, I definitely need more Lego.
Yeah. So the haunted house, I just can't justify it really, but I want to find a way to justify it because it looks so amazing. It'll take up too much space. I mean, I have no idea we're going to put the Jurassic Park gates, to be honest, but
yeah, well, I think my cabinet's completely full now.
Yeah, so. I've gone to the point. I'm thinking of suspending Legos chips from the ceiling. I don't know if even you can do it with fishing wire.
You're regressing, aren't you?
I'm regressing.
That's
It's been a long time since I've hung a ship from a ceiling, but I've got far too many starships that are just lying around in the study now.
I think my next thing is XL models of all the Star Trek hero ships.
So it's this trouble. We work in these things, and then it just means it fuels our obsessions.
I'm just about to invest in a 3D printer so I can print components of models to build. So
we're not geeks in any way, are we?
It's a whole new level.
No,
I'm quite excited. No, not at all. That's why we do Plot and Geekery.
I know, exactly. Sarah says Kevin's Iron Druid series, which is the series I was talking about, I've been listening to Audible, is my husband's absolute favourite series after Star Wars, of course. There is an amazing... So basically, the setup is that there's this... Druid has been around since before Christ, and he knows all the gods, including Mary and Jesus and Thor. He hates Thor. Thor's a bit of a dick. And all the sort of pantheons. And he lives... And the best thing about, though, he's got a dog called Oberon, who only he can hear. And Oberon gets obsessed about something different every book, and wants to be that book. So in the first film, he wants to be Genghis Khan. In the second book, he wants to jump on the magic bus and give it back to the man. And Oberon is just the best character in the world. I think there are some novellas that are just Oberon later on in the series, and I'm going to have to listen to those. They're amazing.
Have you heard Pilgrim, Radio 4 drama? I don't think it's running anymore, but that ran for a few years. Just similar kind of thing of an immortal. He's not a druid, but yeah, he's part of the other world. Trying to kind of put it into the context, but that sounds like quite a similar thing.
Yeah. I mean,
in a very Radio 4 kind of way.
Yeah, I love the fact that whenever Radio 4 does fantasy or anything, it's always a very unique form of. Actually, we're not talking about. I've not listened to any of the Charles Paris adventures. He's back on radio.
Oh, is he?
Oh, yes, yeah.
New ones?
Yep, Friday mornings, 11:30. The first 2 episodes have gone out.
I'm writing this down.
It's fantastic.
So if you've not heard Charles Paris, it's a cosy crime series with Bill Nighy as Charles Paris. He is always getting into plays and my favourite one's when he's in a pantomime and people start dying, and basically there's always murders. It's like Jessica Fletcher. There will be bodies.
It's one where he's playing pretty much the same part that Bill Nighy played in the Underworld series.
Yes.
He gets a vampire villainous vampire. But based on a series of novels by Simon Brett, who wrote After Henry for Radio 4 and on TV.
And Lovejoy, wasn't it? Didn't he create Lovejoy?
No, Jonathan Gash was Lovejoy.
Yeah, sorry. Apologies. I'm telling lies.
I mean, he's still writing with Simon Brett, and he was a kind of radio producer. But there were adaptations of the novels with Francis Matthews in the 80s, I think. And then Bill Nye's come along. So they're adapted by Jeremy Front, who's brilliant. But I think this new one's not adapted from a novel. I mean, they're very loosely adapted, but this is from an unmade Charles Paris film script. Is the new one.
Okay.
But they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and I think for anyone who's not in the UK, you can get them on Audible, and they're just they're just great cozy crime. And he's just such an amazing character. I mean, he's basically playing Bill Nye, you know. And he's the character Charles Paris is always having to sleep on his ex-wife's sofa. Not that I'm saying that's what Bill Nye does, but you know, and he's just got amazing relationships with his agent, and it's just.
Morris,
Morris, they're our choice.
Morris by John Glover, who was in Doctor Who Slipback.
There we go. This is what it's like having a conversation with Mark. you mentioned something. He is like a walking Wikipedia. So you sit there and you go onto these little down these rabbit holes of that person was in there.
Yeah, you go down the my rabbit hole.
And on that bombshell, ladies and gentlemen, it's been lovely to have Mark with us. Thank you once again.
Thank you for asking me. I've loved that.
We'll have to do it again.
Great having you, Mark.
Yeah, and it means that we can talk less, which is always good for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for everyone who's joined us. We will be back. We will say on Twitter. We don't know exactly when the next show is going to be, but we will let you know as soon as we know. And in the meantime, if you've got any more questions for us, if you've got any more comments, just leave them underneath the video, or come and find us on Twitter or Instagram or anywhere else we are. We'll put all the links underneath the show in the show notes as well. So thanks for joining us once again, and until next time.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.